Welcome to Relationship Equity, a podcast that explores how successful people cultivate meaningful connections with others in their personal and professional lives. Learn from the stories, insights, and advice of leaders, innovators, and influencers who have built strong bonds with their teams, their customers, their communities, and their families. Here's Richard Walker.
Welcome back to Relationship Equity and my chat with transformational leadership expert Charlene Li. We've been discussing how she works with companies to help them transform digitally, cultivate a disruption mindset, and prepare for the future of work. Charlene, as you know, I just wrote my first book, Relationship Equity, and I'm always fascinated by the why of authors. You've written several books, including the New York Times bestseller, Open Leadership. Why did you start writing, and what did you hope to gain from it?
The first book I wrote was called Groundswell, about how companies can use social media. And I wrote that back in 2007. It came out in 2008. And I was an analyst at Forrester Research at the time. And I had been blogging since 2004. So I'm about to come up on my 20th year anniversary of blogging. And one of the things I realized was we write reports, 20-page reports. And this was a bigger phenomenon that could fit into a report. I basically looked at this topic and said, there's a book in here. And the reason is books tell stories. They take you on a journey of discovery. And social media is complex, and it was such a different animal. We needed to tell a lot of stories to tell all the different facets of it for people to understand and enter into this crazy new world that they had never seen before. What do you mean customers can talk about me and I can't do anything about it?
Right.
You know, it seems like such a foreign concept to us now, but 15 years ago, it was mind-blowing.
Let's talk about one of your favorite book that you've written and why.
That's like asking which is your favorite child. You can't ask that.
You don't have one?
No. Well, I always look at it this way. The first one is super special because that's the first one. And the last one is super special, which is the last one you worked on. And now I'm working on another book. So each book is unique and different in its own way, and they have the purpose or the reasons why I wrote them. I do like to say that the best part about writing a book is having written a book. The actual writing process is hard. It's painful. It's just so crushing in some ways because you're pouring out everything and it's hard to articulate it. And it's a huge exercise in confidence because putting down on paper some ideas for other people to read, it's like, you've got to be really, really confident. And it's, really brings up everything about imposter syndrome that you could ever imagine. So it's a hard work. It's hard work intellectually and also emotionally.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you mentioned imposter syndrome because I've not even read my own book. I read the manuscript, but I've not read the book. And it was such a wonderful experience. My youngest daughter, the one I told you about at the wedding, did an incredible speech. She edited it. I wrote it with Forbes, and it was an incredible experience all the way from the beginning right to the very end. And then when it was released, I had this weird I didn't want people to read it. It was so weird. And I had to look at the mirror and go, why don't you want people, I was mildly embarrassed and still am. The only thing I can put it down to is imposter syndrome. And a lot of it's personal because you talk about stories and it's a lot of personal stories in there. So it's such a weird, I'm glad I did it, don't get me wrong, but it was kind of a weird experience. Did you experience any of that?
Oh, totally. I'm experiencing it right now because I'm writing a book about generative AI. Who am I to be the expert on this? And yet when I talk to people about the concepts in the book, I'm testing out the ideas in my presentations and my work with executives and executive teams. It becomes so clear to me that it is incredibly valuable and that story has not been told. So it's this validation on one side and insecurity on the other side that are just coming together when I'm writing the book, and it's just a mishmash. And so I really enjoy the thinking process and the writing process, writing stories, but at the same time, it is just incredibly hard to put it all down and to keep making forward progress. And so I write as much as I can and whenever I can find. It's literally sometimes 15 minutes in the back of an Uber. So when I have a little bit of time to actually focus and do something.
An idea pops into your mind and you start writing. That's what I did. I would send myself emails and texts with something that popped into my head that I wanted to slide in there. I'm guessing you do the same thing.
Yeah. And the hard thing is turning the manuscript over to the editors, to the copy editor. At some point, my development editor was like, "You're done." I'm like, "But no, I need to add, I have to fill with me." They go, "You're done." I'm like, "No, but," and it's literally
No.
tear the book out of my hands.
Yeah.
And I've gotten better where I'm just like, okay, I'm done. And with this book in particular, I know it's not going to be this amazing, well-researched and beautiful piece of content. Because it just needs to get out there as quickly as possible. So set it aside and do it.
To your point, Charlene, if somebody says they're an expert in AI, I'm not really sure if that's a fact or not, because it's still so new that I'm not sure if there's such a this. So I was once told, to denote an expert in something, if you want to be an expert, you just have to tell people that you are. Well, I don't believe that for 1 minute, because I'm not sure, because my dad is the wisest man that I know, and he's always said, for every so-called expert that has an opinion on something, there's another so-called expert that has the exact opposite opinion.
Right. I like to say I don't have any answers. I have a lot of opinions that are based on research and experiences that I have found, and it's up to you to decide whether they're credible and useful to you. I endeavor to serve with my knowledge and the ideas that I have, and my hope is that people find it helpful. That's all I can hope for.
You provide information and let people draw their own conclusions. I want to talk specifically about relationships. Let's face it, the whole world revolves around relationships, business and personal, everything does. Earlier in your life, how did you, let's just say earlier in your career, how did you go about developing relationships with people? And you've been extremely successful and continue to be in your career. And my guess is a lot of that is down to the relationships that you've forged with people that you work with on your teams and the clients and anybody that you come across. You are the kind of person that knows how to develop meaningful relationships. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, I always tell people that the one book you have to read is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And just go back and reread that over and over and over again. And the fundamental first thing you have to do is be genuinely curious about the other person. There's no other way. Relationships don't form by you spending time to do it. I mean, there's many different ways you can build experiences, but in the end, what you have to do is to really be curious about somebody and be able to let go of any preconceptions of who that person is and to truly treasure and experience that person for who they are. And when you can remove judgment, you can remove biases and ideas, and hopefully also see how that person is living and interacting with you is impacting you and sharing that back with them. The give and take, that's how you deepen. And you have to create and then deepen relationships.
I couldn't agree more with you. The saying that always comes to mind is ask questions with the intent of listening and hearing and not responding. Now, don't get me wrong, often we need to respond and should respond, but it's so easy to jump very quickly into responding or trying to solve a problem for somebody. It's the first question and then the follow-up questions, and genuine curiosity is so important. And you are obviously a naturally very curious person, as am I. I'm just fascinated by people. But for those people that don't fit into that category, how can they learn, or can they learn to be more curious? Can they learn to ask more and better questions? Is that something that can be learned?
Absolutely, it can be learned. It's a behavior. And you can literally sit down and have a checklist. So I'll give you an example. One of the things my company, when I was running it, was not very good at was giving feedback to each other. And these were all highly intelligent, high-performing people. And they just really felt bad about having to give negative feedback to somebody or constructive feedback or whatever. They didn't want to hurt somebody. And so we gave them a whole entire process and trained them on how to give feedback using the Center for Creative Leadership's program called Situation, Behavior, and Impact, SBI. And it came down to the fact like, hey, I wanted to sit down with you and give you an SBI. Is this a good time? And so there was a whole process that you would follow, and you could train people on how to do this. I found it to be so compelling. I took it home and trained my kids on how to use it.
Did they listen?
Coming to me and complaining about what their sibling did, they would just tell each other, my dear brother, there's something I need to share with you. This is a good time. And then they would just go do it. I'm like, this works. So these kinds of communication skills are absolutely learnable. They are absolutely teachable. What you cannot force somebody to do is to learn it. So it's up to them. You can lead the horse to water. Will they drink or not? So that's the biggest challenge that I often find with people who have a hard time absorbing this. It isn't because they are not teachable. Are they willing to give up the old way of working and thinking, to try a new way, to see how it fits with them, and to make it their own?
How do you help somebody understand that? Because I could not agree more with you that some people are willing and they really want to change the way that they interact with people. Don't know how. The ones that do. What about the ones, is it back to Socrates again and self-awareness?
It is. I had one colleague who was very keen on being very direct with people. And they would just go in like a bull in a china shop and just like, I'm going to tell you exactly how I think about things, because I believe in being transparent, honest, and direct. And I'm like, how's that work for you? They go, well, they just didn't listen to me. They just huffed up so clearly. They just can't take the truth. I'm like, could it possibly be because you said it in a way that they couldn't hear it? And that you were saying in a way that you wanted to say it, but not in a way that they could hear it. I go, which is more important, that you express yourself or that they hear it and change their behaviors? Which is more important? And he said, well, in the end, it's really that they change. I'm like, yeah. And did you succeed in doing that? No. Like, maybe try a different approach next time. So it's helping them see the situation and understand that there are alternatives to the way that they had approached it. And to help them also see that this approach may not have been the best way. And that is to have them sit in the shoes and have empathy for the other person on the other side. Empathy is one of those things that it's probably the best teacher and the coach that you can have when you can tap into and develop empathy for the other person. And it's sometimes very, very difficult for people to do, but it is something, again, that you can learn. I've always wanted to be able to give people like empathy goggles, empathy glasses, so they can look at the world from a different perspective. And I actually believe that's going to be one of the most interesting benefits of AI, is that it'll help you see the situation and understand the situation without that bias and judgment that you naturally bring in. So it can be extremely helpful to say and get coaching on how to be more empathetic.
Let's go back to AI, because AI, it's not brand new. It's been around for a long time. It's called other things and what have you, but it's really come to the forefront now in the world in general. A lot of the commercials around AI. How do you see it impacting business in general, and how do you see AI impacting the world? Is the world going to blow up like some people think? The robot's going to take over and kill us all?
No, I think that's way overblown. Again, this AI is not that good. It'll get there. But I think, again, if we develop it the right way and use it the right way, we'll be fine. You talk to all the experts and the whole doomsday scenario is not there. What I really do believe, though, is that this isn't just a tool or technology. It is a complete transformation of the way we see the world. It is a paradigm shift. Before, technology was locked away. You had to know a special language to be able to access the power of those tools. Now, the only language you need to have and know is your native language to be able to speak. And the real skill is to be able to define the problem that you want the technology to solve and to tell it how you want it to solve it, to think about it, what the output is going to look like and all the things to take into consideration. It could do all of that. The thing that limits us right now is not the technology, because it's much more powerful than we know what to do with it. It's not the cost. It is minuscule in terms of cost. It's $20, $25 a month to use ChatGPT. It is not about time, because it can do it instantaneously. The biggest constraint to us using this and creating that paradigm shift is our imagination.
Our imagination.
We can't even imagine a world yet of how the world will look like. So when organizations are saying, so what is the ROI on this? How do we actually become more productive, effective? I go, you're missing the point. There are so many instantaneous ways that you could put this to work in your organization. to get efficiency gains of 20, 50, 75%, literally overnight. The bigger question is, how is this going to transform the way you look at the world, the way you serve your customers, the way that your customers are going to be transformed by this? How are you going to create competitive advantage in the marketplace? How is it going to threaten your competitive advantage? Those are the bigger questions. And those are not questions that you're going to answer by looking at all the productivity gains that you get. It requires that you take a very strategic approach, which is why I recommend three things: that you get a basic tool like ChatGPT for the top 2 levels of your executive teams. Give them the training how to do this, and then set up some internal Slack channel or Teams channel so that you can start sharing the learnings, because the prompts that you use become IP. It is incredibly valuable to you as an organization to learn how to use these tools to solve the problems and address the needs of your customers. The thing that oftentimes people make a mistake with generative AI is to treat it like a tool in technology. So they kind of shove it over to the side, let IT take care of it. But if you understand how transformative it's going to be, what a big paradigm shift is going to be, then you be like that other CEO that I talked about and insist that everybody get literate with this as fast as possible. Because when else have we had a chance to use a technology that is simple, that easy to use, that's very low cost, that anyone can pick up? You don't have to have any training hardly on it, and you can start using it and applying it towards problems.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, and I'm not going to take much more of your time, but I do want to talk about, you work with business executives, I'll say non-IT business executives and IT executives. And there are some business executives that are very technical. There are some that are scared by technology, and some that, they still see it as like the old movie Big, it's in the basement somewhere, and you're keeping your arm's length and what have you. How do you come into play to work with non-IT executives and IT executives? Because we know in some companies there's a very strong bridge, a really good bridge between the two, and some that bridge is very rocky. What role do you play in making sure that the IT is very much part of the business?
First of all, I try to get IT to look at the customers too as well. It is their job too. They oftentimes say, no, my customer is an internal customer. No, it's not true. You're here to support the ultimate customer that's outside the company. And if you do not have an idea of who that customer is and how their needs are changing, then you cannot support the people inside the business. And so the most forward-thinking IT companies, IT leaders, are ones who say this to me: I know my customer's customer, my internal customer's customer better than they do. I go, that's brilliant. That's what you need to have. So the IT people then never think that their job is to manage technology. Their job is to solve customer problems, ultimate customer problems, with technology that we have inside the organization.
It goes back to what you said earlier. Why? Why am I doing this? What's the true purpose of this? And once that light bulb goes on for technologists and they truly understand that they're playing a very important role within the bigger picture, I find people get more inspired by that because they know why they're doing what they're doing. They're not just writing a line of code for the sake of doing it. It actually has a purpose.
I like to say that there are 3 questions that every single person in your company should be able to answer. The first one is, who is your future customer? What are their needs? The second question is, what is the strategy we're going to take? What are the things we will choose to do and choose not to do to get us from where we are today to that future? And the third thing is, what are you personally doing to make that strategy a success?
Wonderful. I think that's a great way to end our wonderful conversation. I can't thank you enough for your time. Is there one more thing you want to leave us with that I mean, I could talk with you all day. Is there something you'd like to leave us with that we haven't discussed?
Well, I think, again, we started this conversation about relationships, and that's your key focus. And I think it's so important because when you think about digital transformation, we all too often focus on the digital, and it's actually about transformation. And transformation is always about people and the relationships they have with each other. This is why it's so hard. This is the reason why transformations usually fail, is because the leadership and culture aren't aligned to create the kind of change you want to have.
Very, very well said. It all comes back to people and relationships. I could not agree more with you. Thank you very much for your time, Charlene. It's been wonderful speaking with you today.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it for another episode of Relationship Equity. Please make sure to leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't want to miss any future episodes. Cheers, and I'll see you next time.
This has been Relationship Equity. If you want to take your career, your business, or your personal relationships to the next level, reach out to Richard at yorksolutions.net. You can also get Richard's book, Relationship Equity, your cornerstone investment to great gains in business and life, on Amazon now. Relationship Equity with Richard Walker is a production of Forbes Books.